Welcome to episode 2 of this series, which documents the progress from day 1 all the way through to hopefully publishing my debut novel, The Christmas Gift. And in the first video of this series, I decided that the best place to start was to write down a full plot summary for the story I had in mind, and then name the main character. And the name that came out on top was Fayley. So for this episode, my next step was, now that we have the full plot overview, to break that down a little bit more into a more structured idea. And that meant moving from a full macro view of the story down to individual parts, which would act as a step-by-step subplot structure throughout the whole book. So I suppose in simple terms I had the macro plot for the book, and now I just needed everything else in between. So once again, before starting the actual writing process, this is exactly what I did. So I now had a full plot overview for the book, and the main character, Fayley, despite having already spelt his name wrong multiple times. So for my next step, I decided to go ahead and jot down all the key events that I had planned for the story. These are all, of course, in chronological order, as off screen I'm looking through the plot summary I wrote down last time to help identify each particular event. My aim with this is to give me a solid list of subplots, which I can use to create a general idea of a structure to begin with. And so now I decided to group all of these notable events together, each group representing one subplot. Overall, I identified 6 total subplots for the book at this stage, so now was the relatively simple task of defining them. To do this, I simply listed which events corresponded to which subplot. So here, events 1 and 2 were to be collated together to complete subplot 1, events 2 and 3 made up subplot 2, and so on. I then moved on to begin further structuring these subplots into a potential chapter wireframe. I don't know if that's at all an existing term in writing, but sod it, I know what I mean. With 6 total subplots, I initially decided that 5 chapters per subplot would give me a good 30 chapter model to work with. I then thought, what if I try setting 1 chapter per event? I thought I'd give myself an optional extra chapter for each event, for filler and detail, giving me room anywhere between 14 and 20 chapters for the project. At this point, my notes were getting a bit disjointed, so I tried to collate everything together into a cleaner plan. And at this point, I realised that I was just essentially writing exactly the same thing I just had in a different way. So opted instead to summarise everything I'd already done and see where I was. The simplest ways, I decided, were to either stick to simply 1 chapter per subplot for a total of 6 longer chapters, or 1 chapter per event for a total of 14 shorter chapters. I decided the latter would make most sense. Already resigned in my mind that this was going to change many times once I actually started writing. And this planning would likely be rendered unnecessary anyway. But at least now I had a plan to start working from. So it was over to Scrivener to begin structuring. This meant starting a brand new Scrivener project to run alongside Russet, and first and foremost getting the core folders in place. 1 for each chapter, inside a parent book folder. Yes, I did spell 14 wrong. Finally, all that was remained to be done for this Fee 1 plan was to write a brief summary of each chapter corresponding to each mapped event from my plan. And now, it was time to actually start writing my book.